Finally. I'm sorry. This hair was just a nightmare today, and I could not come on looking the way that I did. It's raining here because of Hurricane Florence, and it just you people would have revolted. So sorry about that. Steve, hello again, sir.
Well, I saw what he looked like prior to going on air about 45 minutes ago. Be glad he took 45 additional minutes to get primped for you guys. Okay, just be glad.
But now it's
there looks
spectacular.
It looks great.
I'm having a spectacular hair day today, I must say. Welcome everybody. We are enthralled in a salt and cabbage fight with our dear friend Jillian. It seems she has taken offense to our show last night, but some pretty good meme outside, I will say. It was funny, very funny.
She's still going on Facebook about it though. Like literally,
yeah,
she has already had 3 Facebook. What do you call them? I don't know. What do you call them on Facebook? Live sessions, I guess. Yeah, live session rants on Facebook about us already, talking about us by name and why she didn't come on. And I think she had about 6 people watching, so not a huge following.
Good Lord, what are we gonna do?
I don't know.
It's over for us. Jillian's coming, but Rick, we'll say hello to Rick really fast before we get into the smoking nun tonight. Rick, welcome back. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Glad to be back. It's an honor and a pleasure as usual. Steve and Kyle and Dave, man behind the scenes. Love you guys. Love your show.
Yeah, it's good to see you, buddy. It's been a while.
Your background is fantastic. I like it.
I appreciate it. I did it all for this show. Now I just we had a little trouble. That's why the show is late, but I'm still trying to figure it out. If you guys have something to talk about, keep doing it because I'm looking.
I love your shirt though. Rock on, baby. Iron Maiden.
Oh, are you Maiden?
Fuck you! Oh, come on.
He's been waiting to.
Are you asking me? I grew up in the '80s. Like seriously, I mean, Peace of Mind is like one of my all-time favorite albums, man. It's like one of my top 5. I was gonna be on if I ever had to be on a desert island where you get like 5 albums, Peace of Mind is gonna be one of those 5 albums.
Sure. Yeah, me too. Me too. I would agree with that. Definitely.
Steve, while we're on you, do you want to let everybody know the special guest that we're going to be having join us in a couple of weeks?
To talk with me? That special guest, or which one?
No, the X.
We have a lot of special guests. They're all, first of all of our guests are special, in their own way. Some more than others.
The porn star.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, we've reached out to a friend on Twitter. Her name is Mercedes. She's an actual legit porn star from Brazers, and she's going to come on and she's going to talk to us about stereotypes in the porn industry, it seems, and whatever you want to talk to her about. No holds barred. It's going to be 18 and up, by the way.
I'm looking forward to doing plenty of research for that episode. Usually
I've been working on it all day today.
This is going to be extra special. So for the smoking gun tonight, Steve has a special presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. McRae and talk about something that's near and dear to my heart anyway. Well, I just saw the first thumbnail card, so I only know that much. But it's an important issue that we all need to pay closer attention to. So, Steve?
Thank you there, Kyle. So if we could start this off, I would like to tell you about a little presentation I was going to do for a video a long time ago, but I figured it would actually be more appropriate for this particular channel, and it's called Size Matters.
Yes,
so this is Size Matters with Steve McRae, and it does to some degree. In this particular case, we're going to show you why exactly size matters. So if you have little children in the room, please escort them outside. This is going to be not safe for work. So
I'm purposely not wearing pants for this, Steve. So you just let me know when you want me to stand up fully.
Hang on there, Kyle. We got to make sure we're not going to get demonetized, so we have to have the blur filter. Okay. So I'm going to do the whole Dr. Jensen thing. Next slide. Here we go. Okay. So what we have here, you guys probably have known by now. This is the actual university called Bible Patriot University that Dr. Notice the air quotes here, Ken Hovind got his PhDs from. Now, obviously, you've all seen this before. This is a very small building that creationism has. And if you actually look at it through Google, we have an aerial view. Next.
This is not what I thought it was.
You can literally, is it smaller than what you thought it was? Because I've heard that a lot, by the way. I get that frequently, but Okay, so this is what it looks like from above. Again, middle of nowhere. Most of you people have already seen this small university, but I thought it would be fun to kind of show you some other small things dealing with creationism. So next slide. Next slide. This is actually the Creation Museum in San Diego, aerial view. Now, actually, it doesn't look that small from up here, actually. It actually looks decent size. It's when you actually look at it from ground level. Next slide. It kind of looks like a Firestone or a Jiffy Lube. This is the entire extent of the Creation Museum. Half of it is actually a chapel called the Tabernacle, but the rest is the Creation Museum. Next slide. It's about the size of a couple of trucks. So this is not a really big museum. It's actually located in San Diego. Some of you people have already been there. Inside, it looks like this. The actual museum part is what you see back there. It's kind of winds around a little bit. I think it's probably goes like this, and you're done. Matter of fact, the floor area, the bigger space in the foyer, next slide, is actually dedicated to selling books. So this is what constitutes Creation Museum. Next slide. Now, this was actually called Creation, Evolution, and Science Ministries. This was an organization dedicated to creation science and evolution, what they mean by evolution and science. But when I tried to find them by their address, it came to this location, which is a strip mall. Literally a stripped mall. Matter of fact, as you actually go in to find the actual location in the strip mall, you end up with this. A UPS store. Now I will say for this, I don't know if it was actually the UPS was a P.O. box or the store next to it with the no signage, but it's in there somewhere. This is where Creation, Evolution, Science Ministry is out of. Next slide.
That's what I would expect, actually.
It's pretty small, huh? Again, I get that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this one is actually a Creation Ministries International. This is their headquarters in Australia. Decent sized building, I guess, on average. However, most of it's still under development and it's in the middle of nowhere. The next slide, please. But this is their.
The live chat's got a good point, Steve. They say that for 6,000 years worth of history, that it's actually quite large. So, touche.
You know what? It's impressive for what they had to work with. Again, I hear that a lot as well. And women especially, are impressed by what I have to work with, but whatever. So this is actually Creation Ministry International in the United States. If you zoom in a little bit, we'll zoom in and then go to the next slide. You'll actually find that this is located here as a warehouse. All this is actually their headquarters in the United States, is a shipping warehouse. Again, you can go Google all this stuff. This is from Google Earth. And I'm surprised nobody's done this before, but this is Creation Ministry International. You can recognize the logo if you can't read the writing, but that is actually their headquarters.
CGI.
Next slide. Yeah, I did this in Blender. Is that cool? Now, this was actually kind of my favorite. This is actually Institute of Creation Research. Now, this actually, from this angle, looks somewhat impressive. However, you zoom in a little bit and go to an overhead view, not so much. But when you actually zoom in one more time, you'll find, and we'll zoom in more, zoom, the magic of Dave's computer. You'll find that the Institute of Creation Research is the same freaking size as the Taqueria, located not too far.
There's a parking lot on my face, Steve.
Taqueria. There's a parking lot on your face. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've had a lot of stuff parked on your face before.
I thought I was going to get
building
that
next to it. The building next to it, if you've noticed, if you actually go back to Zoom, is actually the ICR Discovery Center. It's not even the ICR building. The ICR building is that little building that's the same size as Taqueria, but the ICR Discovery Center isn't even open yet. In 2016, they've still, what's that?
I was just going to say that's problematic, Steve, because when you have the choice of going to an ICR for creation science or a taco place, everybody's going to go to the taco place.
Yeah, I highly recommend going to the taco place over the ICR. And that Discovery Center, that's not even open yet. As of 2016, they were still, they needed $33 million to open, right? Their budget was $21 million to $26 million. They were $5 million shy in 2016. In 2019, they're still $4 million shy. So in 3 years, they've raised $1 million to their $33 million goal. Still not opened yet. They expect to open in 2016. And we're going to tell you, I'm going to tell you why that's important here, why size matters coming up here. Next slide. So this is actually ICR's main, or this is AIG's main headquarters. You know, pretty decent size, not too bad. But I thought this is interesting. If you zoom in very closely, you're going to notice something. It's located conveniently right next to an ATM machine. So if you want to go to the Creation Museum, they have right here the ATM machine you can go to take your money from you. How nice is that? It's convenient, I thought.
They have those at churches now, Steve. There are a bunch of churches here in my
oh my God,
that's
brilliant. That's brilliant. Putting ATM machines in the chapels, in the churches.
Yep.
That's why not? Who hasn't thought of that before?
They did a there was something that I saw online the other day where you can now actually, they've set it up with like one of those receiver things that you can use at like restaurants and stuff. But some churches now are taking where if people have like Apple Pay or Google Pay, you can just do that through your phone on Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, you
do
just
it for the Wi-Fi. Have a pay app,
and,
church pay. Yeah.
Why not?
Google for God. Yeah. Awesome. Why not? You know what? People want to spend the money on it, I guess. I think it's kind of brilliant.
Unless you're Catholic, then don't.
Yeah, not Catholic. Yeah, spend the money on something else, people. Okay, next slide. And last but not least, this one's actually called the Creation Research Society. If you zoom in, you'll find that if you look up Creation Research Society, it actually goes to a little post office box, mailbox there. That's nothing more than a house. That is the entire extent of creation research right there. That small little key in your health. Yeah. Now, to give you guys some comparison, we're going to talk about some larger things. This is where normally Kyle would stand up and I have to blur it, but for censorship reasons, probably not a good idea because we like to stay monetized.
I still want to do this. I got ready. I manscaped and everything for this.
Can we get that blur filter ready, Dave? Yeah, I tell you what, if Rick does, you can. Next slide.
I will.
Lace up, Rick. Lace up.
Rick would. He really would.
I'm in, man.
To give you guys a comparison, this is actually the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico, if you want to zoom in a little bit. As Kyle, I'm sure, says a lot, it's huge. Yeah, it's
not as often as I'd like.
That's sad. Really? You need to, yeah. You know, find better dates then. Yeah, biology. I guess there's a statistical variation there. Next slide. This one is actually Bell's Labs. And if you zoom in a little bit, you'll see that this building, this is actually just Bell's laboratory compared to the actual like cars in the parking lot. This place is freaking huge. This is where they do actual research, like where they developed things like the transistor. Next slide. Then you have Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, which takes up a whole city block. That is how big Lawrence Livermore is. It literally takes up a whole city block. Next slide. This would be Berkeley. This is Berkeley's National Laboratory. Takes up half a mountainside. Next slide. And of course, last but not least, the Smithsonian. Now, I told you guys that the ICR had the budget of $31 to $33 million. You guys want to guess what the budget is for the Smithsonian? In 2019, the budget allocated was $947 million. So basically, $1 billion is allocated to keep the Smithsonian going. That's how much comparison of science to creationism. Next slide. Here's an aerial view of it. Again, it's a monstrosity compared to what you would find into any creationist research building. Next slide. So if we want to actually give you a major comparison about how science is to creationism, I think a fair comparison would be something like this. This is the Palace of Versailles. It takes up many city blocks. It's gorgeous. I mean, if you have never seen the Palace of Versailles, go Google it. It's just beautiful and immaculate. Next slide. This is the front of it. It's opulent. It's gorgeous. It's lavish. This would be science. This would be what science would be representative of if we had to show it in the form of a building. Next slide. While creationism would be more along lines of this. Actually, you know what?
That's actually taken at Dinosaur Adventureland, right?
I think it's right outside. I think this is actually where Ken Hovind was staying at one time. But I think we need to actually make it more appropriate. So let's actually show what it would really be for a creationist. That's actually more along the lines of what we would expect for a creationist trailer.
The journalism sticker makes it.
I love that journalism sticker. That you know what? And I think that was spray painted on there. I think that's more than just a sticker. Next slide. So
Probably.
in all,
by flat,
what you got to ask
flat
yourself,
cans of spray paint.
by flat. No, it would be like paint by numbers.
Flat black. It's in flat.
Yeah, I think it'd be more like
paint.
So you got to ask yourself: do you want to accept things like Jesus holding a velociraptor, or next slide, something more along the lines of something cool like Einstein holding a Archaeopteryx? So all in all, size does matter. Science has the size. Creationism, not so much. Size matters.
Yeah.
And back to you.
Don't be a creation science believer.
And I do that.
Be a size queen. Be a size queen. Go for real science.
Amen.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Steve. I wish we had a cool you can be our senior Google Earth size matters correspondent, Steve. I should have opened with that. I'll let you
I
down
can do
there.
that. Sure, no, I could do that.
But now let's go to
time.
our senior coins, Alexander the Great and Bronze Age correspondent. Rick. Welcome back, Rick.
I'm hoping that you guys are. I'm sorry. I'm hoping that you guys are hearing me in real time because I'm seeing myself on about a 20-second delay.
Yeah, we're ahead of them. That's normal.
Okay. As long as you're hearing me in time, that's all that matters.
Yep, we can hear you, buddy.
Yeah, unless that feed from the multiverse is coming through, and then in that case, that is actually you in another dimension.
You know, I would, with all the problems I've had so far, I would welcome that right now because I've lost some of my notes, but it's okay. I'm going to have to do a big part of this. Well, I'm going to have to improvise some of it. And there's no problem. I'm a musician. I'm good at doing that.
I thought you were going to say you're going to have to exaggerate. Like, that's our method. Like, when we lose our notes, we just exaggerate or make up. Yeah, it's good that you're not doing that.
Hyperbole and exaggeration is it's sort of what we do. I mean, as people, as humankind. I mean, we tend to take stories and they're transmitted over time and over space, and we take a simple story and turn it into something that is completely different from what it started with. And that's a big point that I want to hit on today. But what we're going to talk about basically right now is the collapse of the Bronze Age. And the collapse of the Bronze Age is something that very few people know about. Those of you listening who do know about it know how incredible it is. To me, it's probably one of the most amazing times in history, if not the most amazing time in history, because it's something that we can learn from. And it's something that we can only hope will never repeat itself again. And I'm an ancient coin guy. I deal with Roman and Greek stuff. So maybe people are wondering, how the hell did you get into the Bronze Age before coins were ever made? Even though if you see the movie Troy, and this is really aggravating when King Priam puts coins over Hector's eyes. It was like coins weren't invented for another 700 years, asshole. But that's besides the point. It was 2008, and I was kind of in a bad place in life. I had financial trouble. I had some mental issues that I was dealing with, and it seemed like this just perfect storm of right when Obama got elected, and I was very happy about that, by the way.
Thanks, Obama.
My world came falling down. And for sake of needing to save money and get away from everything, I spent a year in Kansas City, Kansas. I'm originally from Chicago. Before that, I grew up in Israel. For those who don't know, and archaeology and history have been what has consumed my life throughout my life for the last 30-something years. This is when Netflix is just getting started, and I remember spending 90% of my time looking for something to watch and 10% actually watching something. But there was a documentary that was made in the 80s called what was it called? It was on the Trojan War. I'll remember it in a little while, and I'll relay
I'll find that for you.
in the
Was it Search of Heroes?
It was with Michael
Age of
Wood.
Heroes?
It was 6 episodes, and it was called. See, I had these in my notes that are lost right now. Oh,
In Search of the Trojan War.
I got the DVD right here. In Search of the Trojan War. Yes. So ran out of things to watch. I'm ashamed that I forgot that. Ran out of things to watch, and I kept getting this recommended to me, and I started to watch it. And it was 6 1-hour-long episodes. And as I'm watching it, with each episode, my mind is being blown. You know, a mind-blown gift that Tim and Eric went, that's happening to me. By the 6th episode, I learn of something that happened in the world that we would consider an absolute apocalypse. Something that, if it happened today, it would be equivalent to, let's say 9/11 happened times 30. Now, times 100, because the world is bigger now. And it all happened within a generation worth of time. And that's what occurred in 1200 BC. And I'm here to tell you the story of how that occurred. And I hope and think that you will like it. And if I can do the story justice, and that's what I'm hoping to do, because this is a very difficult story to tell. And not everybody is going to agree with my take on it. And I am not an expert, but I obsessed with moments in history and times in history, and I was obsessed with this for 5-6 years. And now I'm going to try and tell a compact version of how an entire age collapsed. So, Dave, if you can
before you begin,
I
want to tell you something that somebody chat. They said that after watching your Alexander the Great episode, involved ancient coins.
The what?
They went out and bought ancient coins after they watched your Alexander the Great episode.
Oh, did they really? That is awesome. You know, thank you. And you know, while we're talking about that, people left such incredible comments, and they were really wonderful. And and people voted in that poll, and I can't thank you enough, and I can't tell you how much that helps and that means to me. It really does. Getting comments like that, because I can't go back and watch myself. I just can't do that. I'm one of those people. But seeing the comments that people left were wonderful.
Yeah, we actually try to avoid watching our own stuff with like the plague.
We wonder
why everybody else watches it, but whatever.
I see why, and I completely understand. I haven't had the testicular fortitude to do so.
But you created a new numismatist. How do you like that? A little baby numismatist.
I mean, that's my goal. That's my goal here, and it's not because I'm selling coins or anybody else is. I want people to love it because I love it, and I know how much it can bring, how much it can do for somebody's life to have a hobby, and if people aren't interested in anything and are looking for something, ancient coins, man, it's the best. So now that I give you my little personal story about my world collapsing, I'm watching this documentary, and I'm seeing a story about. Give me 1 second here. About the Trojan War and something that happens over the Trojan War, and we're going to get into that. But I'm going to break into another story really quickly. And Dave, if you are ready, it is the Thira slideshow. If you can run that, that would be excellent. This is a little introduction. And if you guys have questions, please stop me, because I will keep talking until there's no end. You know how I am. It's my 4th time around.
You know how we are.
So we define ages by a certain criteria, and that criteria would be advancement in either tools or new discoveries of metals. So we have the lithic age, the Paleolithic, which means the ancient Stone Age. We have the Mesolithic, which is meso is the middle or in between. And then we have what is anyways, the late Lithic. I can't believe I'm doing this. But we go from that to the Copper Age. From the Copper Age to the Bronze Age, from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, from Iron Age to steel, from steel to what some people call today, we live in the Silicon era, because everything we make is Silicon Valley kind of stuff. So we've really advanced. The area that we're going to focus on is that Bronze Age, right? The Egyptian pyramids, to give you a little bit of background, were in the late Copper Age, right? We didn't have bronze yet. Bronze is the combination of tin and copper. 10% tin, 90% copper. We mix those, and you have a metal that's 10 times stronger, and all of a sudden, everybody wants this stuff. In the 17th century BC, there was an island called Crete that still exists, an island called Crete. And it had an amazing civilization, one that we wouldn't learn about until the early 1900s. I don't know what that was. And we named this civilization the Minoan civilization. And we consider it the first European civilization, but that is a very Eurocentric way of looking at it. This was a civilization that was very advanced for its time. You could see here, we are looking at pictures of some of the excavations. That's the word. It always sounds weird saying excavations that came out of this place. But it's not just that Crete has the Minoan civilization. The islands around it do too. And there is one specific and particular island that the ancient Greeks called Thira, and that we now today call Santorini. Santorini/Thira was a caldera. It had a middle section, it had water going around it, and then a ring of land going around that water. And there was just a little opening into which ships could go into, sail in and out safely. You didn't have to worry about pirates, which existed. And you didn't have to worry about anybody raiding you and taking whatever you had in your ships, because people really had some incredible trading going on back then. But then you can compare this little satellite island to maybe a modern day Manhattan, kind of like a Wall Street. It was it was an incredible place. We wouldn't know about it until we started digging it up, and I'll tell you why it took so long for us to figure out how to even go about digging this place up. 1628 BC, so over 3,600 years ago, this island, part of the Minoan culture, blew up in an explosion that has never been witnessed, one like it has never been witnessed by mankind before. The entire caldera, the entire part of the ring it blew up miles into the air, created all kinds of, I guess, apocalyptic sort of apocalyptic. What's the word?
Apocalyptica, but that's a bass. That's three people playing cellos. But I love that group too.
I'm sorry, I get stuck with words sometimes. Catastrophic, yes. It created catastrophe throughout the Mediterranean. That works too. I should have prefaced it by saying that that this is located in the Mediterranean Sea. If people know where Crete is, it's by the Aegean. It's west of Turkey and south of Greece. The Greeks claimed it as their own island, but Santorini blows up. It falls into the water, and it creates tsunamis that eat up the coasts of the Mediterranean. It creates darkness. It creates all kinds of situations that we would consider apocalyptic. But it didn't kill that civilization off, right? We know this happened in 1628 BC because the ice core records that we have and the dendrochronology, is that how you talk about trees? Is that the tree ring dating, dendrochronology? I think. We're able to track down and isolate the exact year. It's been in question for years. And let's just say many conspiracies have been built around this little island. And if you keep going through the pictures, you will see we have dug through hundreds of feet or meters of pumice and of all sorts of debris to get to these wonderful, beautiful, incredible homes and pictures.
Did you say hummus? They had to dig through incredible amounts of hummus?
I wish I have some hummus, but no, I said pumice. You know, like it's a stuff that comes out of the volcano and spreads itself all over. And if you're looking at and I don't know if I'm seeing it at the same time as you are, but if you're looking at the artwork here, these are frescoes on the walls that we've dug up. These are entire rooms. These people had really beautiful artwork. They had an incredible culture and civilization, but it all came down. It all came down with this explosion. Give me 1 second here. The sun is blocked out for years, and the only part that is still here is Santorini. Some 1,000 years later, maybe a little longer, we hear echoes of that story in Plato's Republic. His grandfather's friend Solon, one of the 7 sages of Greece, tells his family, and they pass it on, that he heard it in Egypt about this great explosion that occurred and created all these horrible situations. And by the time that it gets to Plato, of course, this is an incredible civilization. This is an incredible place that was unlike anything else. It was just another culture and another civilization. And we know that they were smart enough to get out of there before the caldera, before the island exploded, because when we dig it up, we don't find any bodies. They left everything in place. All old nations fall and new civilizations rise from the ashes. And that is what happens here. And that's what we're going to talk about. So let's go into section 2. I call this section Peace Amongst Nations. And if
pretty.
Yeah, they had amazing artwork. If I had the time, I would explain to you what's going on in the art. It's
Is this a
really
carving
cool.
or a relief?
It's like stucco. It's sort of like a plaster, and it was unique to this Minoan culture, right? To this Minoan culture, it was unique to them in that they were also hired by Egyptians, by Canaanites, by Babylonians, by Assyrians, by all the great powers of the time. There were 8 major powers in the Bronze Age that ruled the world, and that's what I'm about to get into now.
You might need to turn down Rick. You might need to turn down the volume on your feedback. We're getting the feedback from where you're playing the stream.
1 second.
So
Let me,
if you'll mute that way we won't get that playback.
Is that better? Do you know?
Let's see. Yeah,
okay.
That's better. I'm not hearing it now.
All right. Better. I can bring the mic a little closer. All right. Yeah, like I said, through this whole ordeal of getting everything together, I've sort of lost a number of my notes. But I'm going to leave it to the audience and to you to guess where those where that story could have gone and maybe is today. The story of a ringed island blowing up, ending up underwater, and
Atlantis.
Plato writes about it years later. Say that again?
Atlantis, of course.
I didn't say that. You did.
Well, we all know Atlantis. Atlantis was a place because it was the Atlantean people that carved the Sphinx out 12,000 years ago. That's just common knowledge now, and we need to stop the narrative.
The Minoan civilization didn't exist at that time. The Minoans are a memory by the Greeks because they shared. The Greeks overtook them and took part of their culture, and the Minoan civilization and all of the explosion of Thira is just a memory. It's a memory, and that's something we're going to get into and go into much further because it's how, when you lose a civilization, the only way to pass along information is to do it orally. But really quick, fast forward to after this Thiran explosion, right? There is a long-standing peace. Families unite to create tribes. Tribes unite to become nations. Nations unite to become empires. Jesus, I sound like Hitler. The late Bronze Age
Not quite.
Stopped. I just feel myself doing it like that, and I hate it. But the late Bronze Age is unique, right? We're talking 1500 BC. We're talking about, if you want to reference it, it's 400 years after Hammurabi. It's about the time of Amenhotep III in Egypt, and Akhenaten in his son, the monotheist. But these major 8 nations, I call them the G8. I didn't invent that, but it's a really good way to look at it. They have come to some kind of, after years of war, they've come to an agreement and a realization, perhaps an equilibrium of where everybody belongs. And they realize that they can get more accomplished with by peace than being in constant war. Peace is a viable alternative to war. So what do? Egypt, let's see, the Hittites, the Minoans, the Mycenaeans, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Canaanites, they all kind of are okay with not expanding anymore. Empires always try to expand, but this whole fighting thing exists for thousands of years, and now we are at a time that is unlike any other time, and there is peace. Yes, there are battles, there are little fights, just like there is now, but for the most part, people lived in constant fear, and there is peace around the area that you will see in these maps. That should be flashing by you, but I cannot necessarily see them. So how do they?
Rick,
these are all kingdoms.
what screen are you looking at, Rick? You might be able to follow along if you're.
Trade wives. They trade.
Rick, hang on. Can you hear us, Rick?
I couldn't.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. Sorry.
Okay, Rick, if you're looking at your screen, where you came into the call, you can follow along with that. That's the actual. We're on a time delay, so we're 20 seconds ahead of the actual YouTube page. But if you look at the same page that you came in with, that's where we are.
Yes. Okay, I'm looking at the actual YouTube.
Yeah, look where it says vMix call. Then you'll see.
Yeah, go back to the other tab.
I don't know if I could do that because I got my notes over here and I might lose those.
Oh, okay, I got you. Well, I was just letting you know if you need to figure out where we are, like in terms of the slides, look at that that tab. That'll be like in real time where we are. Yeah.
As long as they're kind of repeating themselves, I just want people to get a basic idea of where we're at. So let's just keep going forward. Like I said, about half of my notes I'm missing right now, but
it's okay.
Let me finish part, and if you have questions, let me know, because this next part, after I'm done with this is the peace section 2. We will be able to go into the real meat of what happens, right? So,
we love meat.
Don't we all? So here, for the first time in history, I mean, really the first time in history, there is peace amongst all these nations, right? Like I said, there's, clans become tribes, tribes become nations, nations become empires, and empires not swallowing other empires. They are agreeing to live at peace. It's the first time that this has happened. This is the first time that this has happened. There are letters that have been found, and these are the letters of Amarna that were found in Egypt between the Hittite kings, the Egyptian kings, between Babylon, between Assyria, between the Canaanites. I mean, these wonderful letters that each kingdom is calling one another, you're my brother, you're my sister. They really are wonderful. And it's the first time the world had come to experience anything like this. But it wouldn't be long. It wouldn't be long before it all came tumbling down, and it happened fast, and it happened in an instant, I guess you could say. A generation in time is an instant. So that's where we're going to go into the next part. And that's Troy. So if we can, I don't know if I'm looking at it, but if you see some of the pictures there, I'm just looking at. You should be looking at pictures of the Bronze Age buildings. So Troy. The ancient Greeks, the classical Greeks, right? The time of Thucydides and Herodotus and Pericles and Socrates and Plato, they believed that there was truth in the Homeric tales, in the Iliad, in the Odyssey. There were grains of truth in there. I mean, they built an entire religion on those books, and it was written by somebody that we call Homer. It lived about 800 BC. But he's writing about a time 500 years before his time. And he's writing about a time that he would probably know very little about. And the only way he would know anything about is if the transmission of information was done orally, because writing had been lost and a bunch of other things had been lost, which I will get into shortly. But I need to go over the importance of the Iliad. The Iliad covers a group of people that we call the Mycenaeans, that Homer called the Achaeans. These are Bronze Age Greeks. Remember, they have no iron, they have bronze. And they wanted to go into this place called Troy. If you've ever seen the movie, Brad Pitt plays Achilles, and you have this big Trojan horse that in the end is what fools Troy, because they bring it in, and all the great heroes are hiding inside, and they let themselves out at night and massacre the town. That's probably not what happened, but there are truths to this, and this is an important point to make, that in ancient writings, and I will explain how this is done in a little while, but in these ancient writings, you can't just take a character from scratch. I mean, you can, but a character from scratch, to sell him as a real person, Jack and the Beanstalk, we know is not a real thing, right? But Achilles could be. Moses could be. And it's very hard to just make somebody and create a character out of nothing. And so time and time again, when we read the Iliad, right, and look, for a couple of thousand years after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Renaissance occurs, and we think, oh, the Iliad is completely a made-up story. It never existed. Nothing ever happened. But an entrepreneur named Heinrich Schliemann, he makes a lot of money during the gold rush in San Francisco, and his life goal is to take that money and find the real Troy. And a long story short, he does. He does. He finds Troy, and he finds other places that Homer speaks about. As a matter of fact, Homer talks about, I think I have it written down here somewhere, 164 different nations that the Greeks united for this one war against the Trojans under Agamemnon. They go and they breach the walls of Troy. He says it's a 10-year war. It's a horrible war, and there is a story being told there through the Iliad, and that story is how the Trojans were defeated. Any questions up till now? Because I might be missing something, or might be not explaining something properly.
You're rolling, rocking and rolling.
Yeah, you're rolling, man. We're just listening and trying to parse it all together. There's a lot of information crammed in just like an hour segment or something.
I want one of those gold masks.
I'm running out of breath. All right. So the main thing is that here, Trojan War, 1250 BC. Homer writes it down, 800 BC. In between that time, there is no writing, which I will explain in the next segment why there is no writing. So we rely on bardic tradition. What is bardic tradition? Songs. It's hard to believe this, but yes, the entire Iliad was a song. To get into the technicalities of why this was the case will take some time, and I won't bother you with and bore you with it. But we know that they were songs. And Homer was just probably one of the great singers of his time. And he came at a time where writing was not invented, but was, reinvented. Phoenician writing was adopted by the Greeks. And somebody wrote down his stories. Once you write something down, there is no necessity to remember it. That's really important. We live in an age of tape recorders. When I was a kid, I had to memorize at least 10 or 12, 15 phone numbers just to get by in life. Today, that's something we don't even think about. I don't even know my own phone number. So as we record information, we lose that ability, and the ability to memorize enormous amounts of information becomes more and more foreign to us, if that makes any sense to you guys.
Absolutely. I have no memory, virtually no memory.
I can barely remember last night.
Yeah, thankfully, in some shows that we do, I'm glad that I have a very limited short-term memory. It's good to forget.
No, it really is. I'm telling you, I haven't been able to watch any of the previous shows that I've done, and I'm starting to think that might be the case. But I'm gonna push along anyways. All right, now we start getting into interesting stuff. Okay, there's something that happens after the Trojan War, right? You have these massively armed Greeks, Achaeans, Mycenaeans, as we call them, and they are united under the King Agamemnon, whose golden mask you will see appear in front of you from time to time on the screen. Well, that's said to have been his golden mask. It's not, but he's somebody that for the first time unites the Greeks, and his accomplishments are recorded in the Iliad, and then later Homer writes the Odyssey. We'll get into that later. But what happens after Troy? It's kind of the beginning of the end. The beginning of the end, because this lovely time where everybody is at peace, except for the Greeks and the Trojans, that all starts to fall apart. It all starts to fall apart because from the east, let's talk, if you can think of modern day Iraq, Iran, Mesopotamia, and we can go to section 4, Dave, if we're not there already. We start to hear about these group of people, and they play a major role in what's happening. It is a migration and an exodus that begins probably in Sicily and Sardinia. And I'll explain why soon. A group of seafaring people start to go into they come from islands, and they get together and they realize, okay, there are droughts happening, there are earthquakes happening, and they want to take advantage of this. And what they do is they start sacking city by city, nation by nation. You have Crete, Cyprus, Mycenae, Ugarit, Babylon, Assyria, Hittites, the Canaanites, the Egyptians. These are the major powers. And under them, there are vassal states. And each one from the year of 1207 to 1177 BC, 30-year period, they all burn except for Egypt. Egypt barely survives this attack by the people that we only call and know by as the Sea Peoples. And I had letters. Maybe I still have them. Here's what happens. The archaeology for about 100 years has been going on, and we dig it up throughout all these cities that existed, that like I said, these peaceful nations that came together and got along, but a few of them experienced some, earthquakes, things like, some famine, but they were each there to back each other up. But then comes this wild card. This wild card, like I said, we call the Sea Peoples. And we get letters. We find letters from certain nations. And I'll read you, this is called the Ugaritic letter. There's a city called Ugarit. I believe it's in present-day Syria. It might have been a vassal state of the Hittites. And we found this letter. It's in a tablet form. It says, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships have come to my cities, and they burned and did evil things to my country. Does not my father know that all my troops and chariots are in the land of Hatti," so where the Hittites live, "and all my ships are in the land of Luka," which is southern Turkey. Thus, the country is abandoned to itself. May my father know it. The 7 ships of the enemy that have come here inflicted much damage upon us. Now, this is one letter from a small city, well, kind of a small city called Ugarit, and he's sending it to the father because he recognizes himself as being sort of a prince. It's not really his father. Father is a king of, I believe it is the Hittites. And this whole invasion by the Sea Peoples begins. And this is the real beginning of the end. The real beginning of the end. Give me 1 second, guys. Do you have any questions so far?
Not for me. Steve?
I'm good.
You didn't fall asleep yet, did you?
No, because if we fell asleep, we wouldn't be responding to you.
That was last Friday. That was last Friday. I slept during last Friday's show.
Every time I look, I see Kyle. I'm like, is he sleeping? Is he not? I don't know.
This is my intense learning phase.
Well, I feel like I'll just tell you this. Here, take a time out for a second. Being the one that having to talk constantly, it takes a toll on you. That's why if I ask you, once in a while, do you have any questions, come up with something. Just say.
Well,
you just need a break.
How about this? We can ask the live chat if they got some questions so far, because I don't have anything.
There is one that I picked up. They want to know: did the Kassite dynasty fall first?
No, the Kassite dynasty was part of they took over the Babylonians and then they fell. So that's a good question. And here that's tied to Babylon and Assyria, my weakest area. But no, the Kassites didn't fall first. They first conquered and then they were brought down. And I can't go too deep into what happened that far down Mesopotamia because we really don't know. But there are 9 tribes of these Sea Peoples, and this is where it starts to get interesting. I'm going to name the 9 tribes of Sea Peoples, and then I'm going to tell you who they are. At least tell you who one of them is, because they're written about in the Bible.
Can I guess one?
What's that?
Can I guess one?
Yeah.
Aquaman. He has to be a sea people.
I remember when I first heard about like the sea peoples, it blew me away, and I called my brother and I told him, man, I just heard about this collapse of an entire civilization. The whole world came burning down, and it was almost all because of these sea peoples. And he just kind of laughed and said, "Oh, you mean seamen?" Trying to make a joke. And
I was gonna say that, but I thought that might be too obvious. I was gonna go there, but I thought that might be a little bit too obvious for me. You got to try to. You don't want to be predictable.
No, you don't.
Yeah, those are called gimmies. We don't want to give Kyle gimmies. We have to make him work for it. I'll laugh.
Well, I'll take it. Takes the gimmies because here's the thing. And I said this, I think, from the beginning, that this story is a very complicated one, and it's hard to try and take everything that happened. It's kind of like with the Alexander the Great, and mash it all into one single story. But the only reason that we know that there were these sea peoples, right, is because twice the Egyptians, once under Marneptah in 1207 and once under Ramses III in 1177, who finally conquered them, wrote their names down. So let me read their names, and if it's okay with you, we'll take a 2-minute break to go through some of my notes that are in the other room and then come back. But
no,
I want you to try and guess. Anybody try and guess, and I'll tell you who. Well, if you can Google it if I tell you who it is, but I don't care. You can do that. Here are the names as the Egyptians recorded them of these sea people, of these people that started in Sardinia, which is, like I said, Italy and Sicily, and worked their way from west to east and absolutely destroyed all these lands, all civilizations. 1 were the Denian, 2, the Ekwesh, 3, the Luca, 4, the Peleset, 5, the Shekelesh, 6, the Sharden, 7, the Teresh, 8, the Cheke, this always is a tongue twister, the Tejeker, 9, the Weshesh. So one of those 9 plays a significant role in the next section, which is, we're talking Bible next, and the connection of the Bible and the sea peoples. And it's not a coincidence that the sea peoples and the Israelites come to the stage of world civilizations out of these ashes at the same time. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now is where it starts to get interesting. But if it's okay with you, a 2 to 3 minute break just to go through my notes and make sure I get this done right. Is that all right?
Oh, you'll be fine. Just make it up as you go along.
Yeah, just pretend you're a creationist.
Just make it up as you go along. You'll be fine. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Nobody in the live chat fact checks it anyways, right? They're not going to fact check. Yeah, so it's good.
You still might need to turn down your speakers. We're getting that feedback.
Still getting that feedback
when we talk.
Hang on.
But yeah, go ahead and take your break. Steve and I, Dave, let me ask you this. While he's going to get that, do you have the slides loaded up for the next couple of days? If not, it's no big deal.
Figure out who the Palisets are.
Oh, if it's something that is going to take, that it's no big deal. I can just kind of go through them. Let's see, starting tomorrow, the lost city of Z. This is about. No, you're right, Dave. Go back a little bit. Oh, I got you. All right. So the lost city of Z. Dr. David Anderson will be with us to go through what happened when an explorer went down to Brazil looking for a famed and fabled civilization that existed that hadn't been contacted. There are a lot of speculation, even a shrunken head that is proclaimed to be the explorer. So he'll be with us to go through some of the myths and what ultimately probably happened to him. On Friday, we have Recovering from Religion. That is an organization that they specify in, they specialize in dealing with people who are coming out of religion and need kind of resources or a way to transition. That can be especially helpful if you are somebody that's rooted in a very religious family and you might not have options if they decide that they're either going to shun you or they're going to give you a hard time. So this is going to be a good episode for people who may be struggling with that transition. Monday, coming on the heels of Friday, on Monday we will have a deconverted story, and his name is Viken Avisian. I hope I'm not murdering your name, but he has a very interesting story. He'll be coming on to tell us. He just recently deconverted. It was sometime this year, so we'll go through that with him. On Tuesday, this is going to be fun. For this ideology, we're going to be going through life as a pirate, and we actually have a pirate that's going to come on, and it's not Lawrence. Even though he does specialize in pirates, he's bringing on an actual pirate. We're going to have somebody that lives there day to day like a pirate. So, aren't you waiting for or excited for that one? I know I am.
You got to play some Stormseeker. Heard of Stormseeker? They're a folk pirate metal band. You got to play some Stormseeker for that one, or at least ask him if you like Stormseeker, because it has.
I think you sent that to me one time.
And then we'll do one more I sent you a Patty Gurdy.
We'll cut back.
Patty Gurdy plays for Stormseeker.
Yeah. Do we have any more after that? Okay, just do one more. Let's just do one more. Chris Shelton, who is he wrote a book, and he's a very popular YouTuber. He has a channel that goes through some of the secrecy and dealings of Scientology. He will be with us to kind of give us his story and a prequel for the next week, which will be Ron Miscavige, who is the father of David Miscavige, who runs Scientology. So that's going to be excellent. So look forward to that. And that's all we'll do the slide-wise. In terms of bigger shows coming up, we've got Logic, who's going to be with us on October the 2nd. He'll be joining Shannon to talk to some incels. I've got one incel, and I'm looking to get I guess you call them off-brand incels, Steve. I want a specific incel on there as well. Now, there are plenty to choose from. You have fixels, which believe that their wrists keep them from enjoying in relations. You have skull cells, which believe that the shape of their skull prevents that from happening. You've got brain cells, which think that their intelligence prevents that. There are rice cells for, this is not a joke, and I'm not making a funny joke, and I'm not being racist or anything like that. They call them themselves rice cells. But there are people who are of Asian, the Asian race, and they believe that prevents them from getting laid. There are curry cells who, for the same reason, believe that they're Indian, so they think that the curry prevents it. This is not a joke. These are actual things that exist.
What do you call somebody who's incarcerated that doesn't have conjugal visits? Prison cells.
Nice. That's fun.
I guess I'm a former prison.
You gotta love the dad jokes. You gotta love the dad jokes, folks.
I'm a former prison cell. What was the one we came up with last night,
You
David?
probably got more action in prison than you did out. Are you kidding?
Oh, look. Listen. No.
Except when you're not standing guard for. Never mind.
I made a promise before I went in that under no circumstances will that happen. I mean, you just no.
I wouldn't either in prison. I mean, I just couldn't imagine.
Well, people think that it's heaven, like, oh, That was the biggest joke too.
I wouldn't. I couldn't.
You're going to
no.
prison. You're like, it's going to be heaven for you, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. Rick, you're back at a good time.
Welcome back,
We were
Rick.
just talking about my sex life in prison.
In prison, I wouldn't know what sex life is like in prison. I haven't been
or anywhere
to
else,
prison.
right, Rick?
I know. We were talking about my sex life when I was in prison, Rick.
Oh, I didn't know you were in prison.
Oh yeah. For
we didn't get a chance. Maybe everybody should know this. Usually, before we connect to do these shows, we get half an hour, 20 minutes to talk amongst ourselves, get everything set. But everything got kind of screwed up on my end, so we didn't get that. And in the process, I lost a lot of my notes. So I'm winging it because I tried to prepare myself as much as I could for this one, so that the story would be told absolutely beautifully and absolutely correctly. But as long as we're moving forward, that's all that matters. And I hope you guys are enjoying it, because
I don't know what you're talking about when you say that it was your fault that we were late. It was my hair, remember?
Was it your hair?
Yeah, he had like number 4,242 out of place. And he just couldn't get it right. He does number them, by the way.
Kyle, it is good hair, and it gets better. I watch the show, and it's getting better.
Thank you. You are correct. I went back and watched our first. But to be fair to me, when we first started doing this show, I was in a phase where I wanted to let my hair grow out. I was going to let it go down to my shoulders, and so I was in that odd phase where you're like in mid growth and you can't do anything with it. So that's my defense.
Been there, done that.
No, the in between phase, man. I went through that in high school. You have to go through that 1 year of being picked on.
It is about 1 year of just it's like when I was growing my hair long, it's like in between. It's like, oh yeah, not a fan of that.
Yeah, there's always that anyways, state.
So we were asking about which something corresponded to what as far as the sea people.
Yeah. So
in the Bible,
I said we're going to go into the Bible, right?
Okay.
And I named 9 sea peoples, and let me make something clear about the sea peoples and what's happening in the world at this time. Let me just clarify it, because again, it is a very difficult story to tell, and a lot of people that might be scholars in this area that might watch this will want to wring my neck. But I promise you, I am doing the best that I can.
This is going to somehow relate to tribes of Israel, isn't it? It's somehow going to mesh with the tribes of Israel, the Bible, isn't it?
It's not, but it's close.
No?
I know. Let me take a guess. Okay.
It will unite the tribes of Israel.
These are the sea people that came about after the flood, because God flooded the earth to drown everyone, and then the sea people rose from the flood of Noah.
Kyle, what can I say? You're absolutely right. That is a historical fact.
Wow. We all have our crosses to bear.
Historicity is a thing.
I'm kidding. I deal only with things that we can establish with absolute certainty. I mean, here, I am a skeptic. We're all skeptics. That's why we love the NonSequitur show, is because everything can be questioned. Everything can be re-examined, examined. It's, we use the Socratic method. And I love that about the show, and that's what brings me back, and that's what brings everybody back. And that's why when you hit 100,000 subs, all I'm saying is don't forget about me. I will hone my craft so much better by then. And
your lips to the non-existent God that Kyle doesn't believe in ears, right?
Amen. Hallelujah, brother.
Nice. We're working on
it. And I really, really quick before we get back to this, Steve, I know, what was it, 3 weeks ago or a month ago, you were doing one of those long 8-hour rum and coke things, and I joined in at a time where I had been drinking, and I had a blast. and I hope I didn't make too big of a fool of myself, but it was really fun. I met a really cool guy.
When we have a rum and coke night, there's no way anybody can screw it up. We have fun. It's the whole point to get drunk and be stupid.
Have you heard the one where Steve gets drunk in it? The one that where Steve is shit faced. There's one from January where he's absolutely just soused, and
it's rare because I can't drink that much, right? So it's when I get to the point where I'm soused, I've had my limit because
he's like, no.
Most people know it takes me forever to drink.
You don't understand, man. It's P comports to Q. If P, then Q.
I think I turned Baptist for that particular episode, didn't I? I can't remember. Yeah. No, Calvin. I mean, I turned Calvin for that episode. Calvinist.
Most likely.
Well, we had a guy.
I need to join us for Coke nights.
Those are fun. I joined at 3:00 in the morning after a night of drinking and meeting an ex-girlfriend from 18 years ago that had moved to Poland and came back here to visit. And I came back here and did and joined the podcast. 5 hours into it.
Didn't go well, obviously.
I met a really cool guy.
Her and you wound up with Steve.
Hey, I'll take it, Steve.
Well, I mean, I started the night with Rick. I didn't end up with him in the morning, though. Kind of like most of my dates. Yeah.
No, I thought I was aggravating you, and maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't.
Not even remotely close. I don't know why you would even think that.
I don't know. It's a self-deprecation thing. But I want to say this really quick, and it'll only take a second. Another person was on from Australia, goes by the name Macabre, and this guy is awesome. I don't know if he's got a YouTube channel or if you're familiar with him or not, but we've been emailing back and forth. What an awesome dude. What an awesome dude.
Melissa Macabre, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, Macabre from Australia. Die, mate. Is that Australian? Yeah. All right. So let's jump back into this, and I apologize for the little break, but it gives me a little time to kind of gather my thoughts and get everything back together and put everything into perspective, because here is where the real story begins, okay? What have we gone through so far? We have gone through, let me back up here for a second. We've gone through peace throughout the known world. We have gone through the Trojan War and the Greeks defeating the Trojans, and it being recorded 500 years later by Homer. And if you read the Iliad, and you should read the Iliad, it's based in a lot of fact, because we find a lot of things there that the archaeology really backs up. Then out of these Greeks, they come back home. They come back home after Troy, to the Trojan War that they defeat. They start fighting amongst each other. And from there, as they're dividing and conquering themselves, the best of them go into ships. They become these sea peoples, these raiders, these entrepreneurs that want to go in and plunder and do everything they can to just take the gold. They don't care, burn the city down, displace everybody. That's all that matters. Glory is all they want. And this puts the entire world into what we call a dark age, a true dark age. Dark age is a time where writings are lost, architecture is lost, cultures, civilizations are lost. People that lived in major cities no longer live there. Everybody starts over. And you have generations growing up with the remnants of these megalithic, beautiful, giant buildings that are still in ruins, but they're still giant buildings. They're living in the shadows of these. And how and what do you make of them? Imagine we live in a globalized world now. Imagine that everything falls apart and all information is lost, right? We have computers, we have information that we can pass along, but imagine that all that is gone and only word of mouth exists for 500 years. We live in the ruins, we see the Sears Tower in Chicago, the Empire State Building, all the great achievements, and we say, gosh, there must have been gigantic people that lived. Can you see how that could happen? Can you see how people can take a look at what is left behind from generations past while they're living in shanty little towns and have no writing, have no real skill? All they're trying to do is survive. And they look back and say, there must have been amazing human beings that lived in the past. Because that's what happens. That's how the Bible was written. That's how the Iliad was written. And many other great stories is because there is a dark age where writing is lost and information is transmitted via word of mouth. And many times this is done by song. And again, that's how you get the Iliad and the Odyssey. It was a song. So, man, my mouth is dry.
You want to like send a drink, or you want to like
You been
finish
smoking
this
some
more?
weed?
No,
I mean,
I'm
normally,
good to go.
I mean, we ran late today. Obviously, we were an hour late, so we're definitely getting past our normal time that we actually do it. We can always continue into a part 2 type thing or something.
Let me
Totally up to
finish it
you.
up faster. I just
Sure.
I shouldn't have saved the best for the last. All right, I'll. What are we at right now as far as time goes?
30 minutes,
I don't want to.
roughly.
Okay, we're almost done. Okay, so here, I told you names of 9 sea peoples, and we're having a hard time figuring out who they are, but we believe that they were the Mycenaean Greeks, that after the Trojan War, they come out and they start raiding all these other lands because they are pirates, and pirates to them, if you ever read Homer's Odyssey, a pirate is a wonderful thing to the rest of the world. It's a terrifying thing. So they destroy all these lands, but in 1177 BC, they go into Egypt, and the Egyptians know about this. They have the intelligence for this, and they, instead of allow the sea peoples to land inland, because once they do that, you're fucked. They stop them at sea, and there are wonderful. By the way, are we at section 5, Dave? With the Philistines? Sorry. You have this description of how these sea peoples were stopped, and they never had to worry about them again, except that they populated them in other areas. One of these peoples were called the Peleset. In Hebrew, in the Hebrew Bible, they were called Paleshet. Plural for Paleshet is Plishtim. Plishtim, translated in the way that we know it, are the Philistines. The Philistines are Greeks. That's amazing. The Philistines were thought to have just been some people, maybe from the Middle East, maybe from somewhere else, but the archaeology shows us that they are actual Greeks. So the Israelites come out of this, and we don't know if they're part of the Sea Peoples, or most likely they are the surviving Canaanites, because the Canaanites get wiped out. And the Israelites live in the hills. The Philistines take the coastline on the Mediterranean and establish themselves. If it wasn't for the Philistines, the Hebrews wouldn't become the Israelites. They wouldn't unite. They wouldn't have fought each other, and you wouldn't get, all the mentions and the Davids and Goliaths, which, by the way, I don't often give the Bible credit, but they get a lot of things right, as much as they get wrong when it comes to describing certain events, at least memories of it. So this tribe of the Paliseth become for hundreds of years the nemesis of the Israelites. And to me, that's like one of the most awesome stories. That is an episode all on its own. Any questions on that?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some of those sea people you're talking about, because I was looking this up. One of them, the Denyen, says that a theory that is the Israel tribe of Dan, and then Wishish is the Israel tribe of Asher. Wishish.
No. So here's the thing, right? I am obsessed with certain areas and topics of history. So I've looked at all these things a million times. And this is the problem with telling the Bronze Age collapse story, is that because it's incomplete, people can add their own interpretation to it. And you know where that can lead. That can lead to,
creationism?
As I told you, to what?
Creationism?
Amongst other things. But
cabbage juice.
One thing we know for sure, the Paliseth or the Paleshet are the Philistines. We know that because they take over 5 lands, Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, and Gat. Those are the 5 main. The Bible says that, and when we go dig it up, it's exactly where we find Philistines. And their pottery, the way they build their buildings, the way they build their temples, and worship their gods, it's exactly like the Greeks did. I remember when I heard that the first time, I was like, holy shit, the Philistines are Greeks? Are you kidding me? But these were Greeks before the Socrates.
We'll go back a sec. Go back to that other one real quick. Was this like, go back to the last photo. Was that like the first deodorant commercial?
But the ones the armpits up?
Yeah, he's like, is he like checking himself?
Somebody etch an axe can in his hand.
Yeah, exactly. I really think it should have axe thing, and we know that.
The Philistines didn't like axe. I think they're more degree people now. But I mean,
what happens if it was made out of bronze?
What the Philistines look like. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You're saying?
No. All go ahead.
So, yeah, the beautiful thing about it is the Bible does record these things, and as much, and I'm a skeptic. I only care about truth, and I give credit where credit is due. The Bible is not, especially the first 5 books, were not meant to be historically accurate, but they are memories. And all legends and all sort of myths and religions are based in memories. And the transmission of information that occurs is like a game of telephone. And when that happens, you get the hyperbole and you get the sort of exaggerations that come along with human nature.
Are these like slaves in this picture? Or what? I mean, who is this? Is this the cast? Is this like plebs? Is this who? I mean, who are these people representing in this relief?
So these represent the sea peoples that the Egyptians caught, and the ones with those
prisoners?
Sort of yes, they are the Paleset. They are the ones that have those sort of like weird looking hats that go out like this. We refer to them as the Philistines. There were, like I said, 8 other tribes besides the Philistines, but the ones we know the most about, and that's what you see the most of the pictures of, are the Palestites, the Philistines.
Kind of looks
And
like
they would
homoeroticism in a way.
Oh, you ain't seen nothing, Steve.
Do I want to? Yeah, I got all excited, but
I find it fascinating because I always thought that it was just a made up, a bunch of made up stories. Like the David and Goliath thing, obviously it didn't happen the way that it did, but when Goliath is described with his armor and things like that, it's described correctly, just like in the Iliad. There is, for example, a helmet that is worn by certain warriors that is made out of boar tusks. I believe it's 42 tusks that go around. And we dig up these ancient graves from the late Bronze Age, and we find exactly what Homer describes. And that happens with a lot of the Bible too. But there is a bias with biblical narratives. We try to, or not we, but some people try to translate it and tell it the way that would fit a narrative that they want to push. And they do that with everything in history. So these are always dangerous stories to tell. But one thing we can be for sure is that one of these sea peoples were the Philistines. They came from Greece. The Bible says they came from Kaftor. Kaftor was Crete. But I think they might have just met up there. It's even amazing that we didn't know the name Kaftor until about 100 years ago. So we didn't know that was Crete until we, archaeological digs, this and this and that. So yeah, these are, they will fight each other for hundreds of years, and this unites the Hebrews and makes them Israelites because tribes united make a nation, and you need a nation to defeat somebody that's better and stronger than you. And for hundreds of years, Israelites go against the Philistines. And history is written in the Bible, and we find outside sources, not that many, but the archaeology also backs it up. I'm going to skip one section, and we'll go to the outro. I'm going to skip section 6 because basically what I talk about there is all the different things that happened besides the people. There was drought, there was famine, there wasn't pestilence or disease, but everybody was kicked out or removed from where they lived, and civilization needed to start over. And like I said, writing was lost, architecture was lost. All these things that make civilization are lost. And it would be like a modern day electrical grid failure throughout the world. Like the dams would be broken throughout the world. Cyber attacks happening. It would be an all-out panic and chaos because there would be no other way to. There would be no way to recover from this. You have to start over, and that's what happens. And then we enter the Iron Age. And the Iron Age is the next spot, the next thing that happens. And I have one final thing I wanted to read, and then we could end it at that, and I hope I did okay.
As always.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's at least there 2 people or 3 that I saw that said you're their favorite guest. So you have a couple fans.
You have no idea how much that means to me. You have no idea. It means the world to me.
You, Misha Griffith, and who's the other one? The Egyptologist are my favorites.
Is that Dave saying that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, you're my favorite.
I hope it is. I hope it is.
I love you guys. I will end with a little thing that I wrote, if I can find it. And it's sort of a lesson that that we can take from all this. Give me a second. Because there is a point to telling the story, is that, we always talk about history repeating itself, about not making that mistake. But I mean, what does that really mean? What does it mean when we say, don't allow yourself to repeat the bad things in history? Is it short term? Is it long term? Is it the big picture? Is it the small picture? To me, it's always been the big picture. We go through cycles. We go through certain periods. And right now, it seems like we have a time that ideology is clashing, right? That there is a left versus right sort of, and obviously the loudest ones are always the ones that make the most noise. There could be much bigger problems. What we are facing now in the world is nothing compared to what people that had to deal with the sea people went through. They had to leave their homes and start civilization all over again. And starting civilization all over again happens, and that is a whole nother story in itself. Because out of this collapse, we get the classical Greeks, we get the Romans, we get the Persians, we get a whole new chance at starting civilization over. And we did a damn good job. We got rid of kings for the most part. Democracy is invented. Many wonderful things came out.
We got a king back now, I think.
Sorry?
Or what will eventually become a king.
Yeah, I mean, that's the default. A kingdom is a default, and it takes somebody, and it takes the people rising up against a kingdom, especially when they're not treated properly, to change the rules. It can be done. It wasn't done for a long time. The Greeks really did it the best, especially in Athens, under Solon, Cleisthenes, Pericles. But that's a different age, a different time. So
you know that you're on a call actually with a king, right? There's a king in this call.
Is there?
King Steve.
Steve is a king to me. So I'll close with this. I wrote this quickly right before I went on today, and hopefully it makes sense. It's a few paragraphs long, and then we can end it if that's okay.
No.
So this is a message that I was trying to get across, and hopefully I did. It goes like this. In a dark age, the tales of history and her heroic figures of the past are limited to the confines of oral transmission for centuries at a time. In a new beginning, the past is written down and recorded, but the relics of time are subject to the exaggerations and hyperbolic tendencies of human nature's imagination. They take root and embed themselves within the narrative of a glorious past that modern man transformed them into. These relics of oral tradition often go on to form the myths and create the heroes and the legends and the new civilizations that will build people will build their national character upon, possibly eventually a constitution. In a darker age, however, generations grow up living in the shadows of monumental ruins. Buildings and collapsed walls made with perfectly cut stone each so large that those living among them believe they must have been built by a race of giants, while completely ignorant of the scope and magnitude of accomplishments that human beings are capable of bringing forth when they cooperatively work together. Parents will tell their children these giants of the past were great men, heroes, prophets, part man, part God, like Achilles, Gilgamesh, and Moses. These great men walked and talked with God. The grandparent reminds them, these are your ancestors. They lived in a time when man was more than man, and now you, the descendants, must strive to become what they were. It is with this mindset, with this way of thinking, that an entire religion and myths can take shape. The legend says that beneath the ruins of the great Cyclopean walls and once fantastical palisades the giant godmen are said to have built, a phoenix lies in wait. This still dormant phoenix will rise when a generation is born that can prove itself worthy of witnessing its flight. We must remember that civilization and culture are a finite human experiment. As long as an unbroken line of information is passed down from generation to generation and is built and improved upon, civilization, fragile as it might be, can continue to exist. A successful civilization is dependent upon communication. As long as we learn to hold on to the good ideas and let go of the bad ones, we can continue to press carefully forward. Ideas and laws based in those ideas are what will ultimately determine the staying power of a civilization. The more a culture can adapt to innovation, the longer it will last. I must see people prepare once again. We move ahead with the hope that humanity will continue to act in a manner that is not destructive but productive to its existence. We move forward with the hope that a future generation will never have to look back at us and call us giants that talked and walked with the gods. We move ahead with the hope that a phoenix will never have to rise from our ruins. We each play a part in this. We're all connected to this thing called civilization. Let's hope that we don't screw it up. Thank you. That's all.
Did you write that, Rick?
Yeah,
You're muted,
last
Steve.
second. I hope it made sense.
I don't know if he can hear me. Dave, can you hear me, Rick?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Did
I
you
hear
write
you.
that?
Yeah, I wrote that just last minute
Wow.
today.
Impressive. Very
I needed
nice.
a message.
Steve, I think you're muted,
Thank
King
you.
Steve. Can you get one of your knaves to hit the mute button, please? Or the unmute button? The knave,
Apparently
Steve.
not.
The knaves.
The knave, Steve. Apparently he can't unmute.
Oh, okay.
Unmute,
How about
Steve.
that? Sorry.
There we go.
I was saying that he could have used that speech as if he was a war general to kind of lead people into battle. I feel like I want to go attack a
I
neighboring
know.
city for some reason right now.
I see him on a golden steed.
I would love to. Yeah, when I can write things down, I think I do a much better job than just ad-libbing everything. But yeah, either way, I mean, like the main thing that I want to bring across is that if a civilization collapses, there is a dark age. In that dark age, information cannot be passed along in any other way than by oral tradition. During that time that stories of past people are talked about in that oral tradition, the hyperbole and the exaggerations take place from generation to generation, and regular people become giants and god men. And that's where we get the Old Testament, the Iliad, the Odyssey, is in dark ages. There have been dark ages before, but nothing that we can look at historically like the collapse of the Bronze Age. And I would recommend anybody to look up. They're available. It's available on YouTube. In Search of the Trojan War, a 6-part documentary. It was life-changing for me. And if this is something you'd be interested in, talks about the Trojan Wars, the evidence for it, and ultimately in episode 6, the Sea Peoples. The more you look into the Sea Peoples, the more they blow your mind, because it's still a work in progress. It's still something that we are trying to solve. And we're getting better and better because the archaeology is becoming more and more, it's telling us more and more. There's a lot of stories that we still need to, in humanity, that we still need to uncover. And one of the great ones that we are kind of guessing at is the one I told today, attempted to tell today, which is that of the collapse of the Bronze Age. I thank you for having me.
With any luck, I will be, like you said, getting more acquainted with these seamen later on tonight. With any luck, so hopefully that will happen. I have one question before Steve gets into
sea people. I'm a seaman. You're talking about sea people, right?
That's right. You're a Navy guy.
Navy guy.
Before Steve does super chats, there was one question, and it was, what do you think about the idea that the tribes that came, the tribes that later became Israelites did not come out of Egypt?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few opinions on that. I'll try to quickly address it. Right. Linguistically, I speak Hebrew, so people try to make the match that one of the Sea Peoples, the Danaan, were the tribe of Dan. It's not that. It'll take me a long time to explain why that is. But something strange happens. I believe that the Israelites are the remnants of Canaanites that were able to exist, and that there is somebody that came from Egypt, call him Moses, call him whoever you want, that brought a new religion to him. Maybe this was the religion of Akhenaten that spoke and taught one God, because it's they're very close in time. That's a really interesting story, and one I've read and studied a lot about is the whole, where did the Israelites come from? But it starts with the Sea Peoples. 1207 BC is the first time the Egyptians write of the Sea People, and it's also on the same Marnepta stele, it's called, that we hear about the Israelites. There is some kind of connection. We're just not sure what it is yet.
Well, to be fair, we all start with seamen, right? So I think that's not accurately.
We do. Yeah. That's for sure. That's a fact. That's a known fact, scientifically proven.
Sweet. Okay, Steve, you can read super chats now.
Okay. Just to let you know, we did actually have a guy in our boot camp. His last name was Stain.
Seaman Stain. Next
Stain.
one. I'm familiar with those as well.
Yeah, he was not a happy camper in boot camp, to say the least. You know what? They should have recommended he went in the Air Force. That's what we told him. Bram SL I1 at Mosey MYYM. There are civilizations that are older than 6,000 years. Try getting around that. Reality doesn't give a shit about your fairy tales. $5. Yeah, there's even written civilizations go back 10, 12,000 years, but we also have pottery that goes back 30 to 40,000 years. So this narrative that
I'm not covering that time period. I'm covering 1200. 1500.
No, but Mosey's a younger creationist. He thinks that civilization started literally 6,000 years ago. Demonstrably false.
You forget dumb people like that exist, don't you? You lucky.
We try. Rick's
man.
Smart. Rick tries to forget. Yeah, he doesn't want to. He doesn't have to deal with dumb people like that. I don't blame him. That's our job.
I would love to. I know my Bible very well. I mean, I really do.
Well, maybe Mosey would come in and talk to you. We deal with dumb people so other people don't have to, basically. IOPNC1, $5. Is he the 1176 BC guy? Cyprus means copper.
I think he might be talking about the 1177 BC guy, who is Eric Klein, one of my idols, personal heroes, somebody that has taken the conversation of the collapse of the Bronze Age to the masses. I I got into it long before, and he's introduced it to more people because we need more people studying this period of time. We need more Hittitologists. Yes, that's a word. We need more people studying the period between the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. So anybody that's out there that might listen to this today or 50 years in the future, we need people that take on the late Bronze Age as a major part of their education. We need you, especially Hittitologists. And it sounds
Did you say you looked up to him, Rick?
Hittitologist.
Did you say you looked up to him? Did you say that you looked up to that guy?
Yes, Eric Klein, absolutely. I've read his book, 1177 BC, The Collapse of the Bronze Age. I have it on audiobook. I have it on paperback.
Well, how about
I've
that?
read
You
it.
just got mistaken for one of your heroes, so that's got to show
Wow.
you that
Yeah.
you did good.
Somebody
Eric
actually
Klein, I
compared you.
was trying to
Wait.
do that if you watch this.
Somebody
I
actually
am a
also
big
compared
fan.
you to Aaron Raw. They said you're like the history Aaron Raw version of the history guy. So like Aaron Raw
That's
is
a
the biology.
High
huge
praise
compliment,
tonight.
because
Yeah, no
I
shit.
love Aaron Ross.
Wow. Stroke that ego
Thank
for
you.
Rick. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually,
Pragmatic.
if he's going to be like
What's
Aaron Raw, you need to look at one of those artifacts behind you and yell at it really loudly.
Oh
And
yeah,
you gotta drink like 8%
well,
alcohol beer.
I don't know if you guys can see this one, but this is
That is pretty badass.
Now
Yeah,
you're the
this is a
Aaron Raw
last
history.
minute
There you go.
edition.
Yeah. Last one, pragmatic culture, $5. Next time you guys talk about the Bronze Age, you should bring on that guy, Bronze Age Pervert, really smart guy, and his book is a great read. And just to let you know, Kyle, he is an aspiring nudist bodybuilder.
Wow.
Bronze Age
Right.
Pervert. An aspiring nudist bodybuilder.
You don't have to aspire to be a nudist. I don't know how one aspires to be a nudist. That's
nudist
actually the
bodybuilder, I
one
think.
thing that you don't have to aspire to be, because you can just do it. I mean,
You know what? There's some
you can
flat
do
earthers
that.
that'll still fail how to be a nudist. Okay, I guarantee that still not be able to figure it out properly.
That makes no goddamn sense. That makes aspire to be a nudist. No, stop it.
He's a bodybuilder, though.
What does he have to do with the Bronze
Whatever.
Age?
He has a book called Bronze Age Mindset.
I would be interested in knowing what that's all about.
He's in good shape.
I don't care about his shape. I care about his ideas.
Well, I'm speaking for
That was for
Kyle.
me.
I'm
That
looking
was
out
for
for
me, Rick.
him. I mean, come on. You know.
The shape was for me.
I'm coming at it from a different angle.
Clearly.
Is that well,
I think Kyle would come at it
people
from
like when
any
you do
angle.
that. Yeah, people like it when you do that. Karma Sutra. You can get every angle. Read the Karma Sutra. Do you was that the last one, Steve?
That was it, sir. Yes.
Excellent.
Well,
Okay,
thank you
well,
for questions, guys. I really appreciate it. I know this is not a topic that you're used to hearing about, but anybody that did ask questions, I can't tell you how much that means to me. And like I said before, people that left comments, you guys, you keep me going. It means the world to me. I had somebody that say for the Alexander one that I did last that they were a teacher and that they were going to use the sort of idea that I put behind the Alexander narrative, use that. And I mean, wow, what a compliment that is. And I can't say enough how much that means to me. And I really, really appreciate all the kind.
We have one more
Absolutely.
super chat. Max Inez for $5 says, "Tell Kyle that if he needs a boy toy, I'm looking for a new job." Max, you're too young for Kyle.
Well, you came at a good time, sir. Just land in
He's
my
not even old
DMs.
enough to drink
We'll
yet.
work it out.
Yeah. No, he's too young for
That's
that.
okay. We don't have to tell
He's just a
anyone.
boy. I don't think he's even old enough to drink yet.
I will say this, Rick. You always do a great job. That was fantastic. You deserve all of those accolades, and I have a feeling that based on the live chat that you're going to get the same understanding. And when you say that you know that this is a subject that's our audience isn't used to hearing or that we're not used to dealing with, That is a good thing. It is refreshing to have something like this when you come on the heels of a live stream that discusses how cabbage juice can regrow limbs, and how the people who push that cabbage juice that can regrow limbs literally shits themselves on live stream in front of other people and laughs about it and shares pictures of poop with each other. So the Bronze Age, bring it on, baby. Bring on the Bronze Age.
Well, it's good. It's good to mix these things in, because I mean, what you guys are doing is, like I've said from the beginning, is important, and it's all about ideas. And I just appreciate that I'm able to be a part of this, and I thank everybody that is listening now and that will listen in the future. And I think that the NonSequitur show is going to be a very big show. It's growing, and it will keep growing because of
your family
what
now,
you guys
Rick.
do.
Your family.
I feel
Those
like
guys are hacks,
Let's
Rick.
go have
Don't
dinner at
fall for
Olive
them.
Garden.
Don't fall for them.
As long as I can get all the breadsticks.
There you go.
Steve is actually having a rum and coke, I believe, on we say Friday night, Steve.
Friday. Yeah, I think Friday.
There you go, Rick.
What we decided on.
Get drunk. Now the key is to drink a fifth before you go on rum and coke night. You don't want to actually drink on rum and coke night. You want to be tore up from the floor up before you even dial in. That's where you have good.
I'm
you have
always
good
willing
shows.
to be tore up from the floor up, Kyle. I'm always
Excellent.
willing to do that.
I don't get drunk. I get high. I don't.
I'm going to one of these days. I'll
do
tell you
smoke a lot
what.
of-
Once we get the dispensaries here, because for some reason they're not opening any in the area that I'm at because of city ordinances, but not too far from here, they plan to open one after the beginning of the year. I will indulge one of these days and try it again. I'm probably going to hate it and regret it, but I'm going to.
Yeah, right. We'll be seeing you, Steve, from there'll be the bar, the angry bartender that's trying to wipe up your spot. You'll be streaming from out there. Yeah.
Hey.
Well, enjoy Steve while
Quite
you have him,
possible.
ladies and gentlemen, because as soon as that bar hits, he's gone for him.
Kyle, I already told Steve
Yep.
I've got some California dreaming going on as far as my job search goes. So if I end up going to California, I will find him and get him high.
He told me he would,
Oh,
and
good.
I told him I'd let him.
But it has to be on the show, Dave. You can't give it to him beforehand.
I don't think people want to see me high. It's not a pleasant thing. You guys will not be impressed.
I'll drive down there. I'll drive down there from Silicon Valley, and I'll bring some with me, and we'll do it live from your house, Steve.
All it's going to be is me thinking I'm going to die. It's all it's going to be is me paranoid thinking I'm going to die, because I'm telling you, marijuana has a weird effect on me.
It has the same effect on me. Same way. I could do any other drug,
We'll
but
do it live on
not
the show.
marijuana.
Live on the show.
Are we still live?
Rick, people want to know if you have your own channel. There's at least 6 times I've seen that so far. Does
Thanks
Rick
for
have his own
asking
channel?
that.
Does Rick have a show? That's a good question. Why haven't you done like your own thing where you live stream and do this sort of thing back and forth with people?
I've been contemplating, and I should, and I will start a channel where I do hit a sort of history story podcast that maybe I do 1 or 2 a month, and they will be interesting stories that not too many people have heard about. I will do that, and when I get that up and running, I will let you guys know. It's something that I'm planning ahead towards, and I appreciate people even bringing that up. That's awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, well, from most of us here at NonSequitur, not Steve because he's a dickhead, we wish you a good night, and we will see you back here tomorrow for what do we have tomorrow? Anybody know? Want to take a guess?
Tomorrow, we have Dr. David Anderson, Lost City of Z.
That's right. We just talked about that. Oh, by the way,
did.
Another super chat just came in. The last 30 minutes was so I won. Thanks so much, Rick. Intriguing. We'll have to watch the entire show immediately. I think they came in late. But what does I won mean? I tell you, people, stop coming up with words. There are too many words now.
I think that's an abbreviation. I don't know.
Thank you.
I won. I don't know. We're just going to call it cool.
The delay.
It means
Wait for the
cool.
delay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Cookie, for the super chat and teaching me a new word. I can't wait to hear. You can't read it. Well, I just did read it.
Cookie Nibs, you're awesome. Thank you.
It isn't a word. I'm confused now.
Yeah, we kind of
now they
figured
said
it.
I can't read it, but I did read it. I already
his
did read
computer's
it.
screwed up. His keyboard's screwed up. He's
What's
got
one
big
and-
fingers, big thumbs for his little like Android phone.
I can't remember if I actually hit that blunt before I started the show now, and I'm just zoned out.
Yeah, we're not high enough for this yet, so.
Oh, it wasn't a
I'll
word.
take it
Okay,
as a
I got you.
compliment.
It wasn't a word, Kyle. It was a mistake. Yeah, we got that.
I want means that you
man.
like me from now on. Thank you.
Can we just end this now, please? Let's put it out of our misery.
Yeah, we should probably get out of here. Look at my face turning red.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's end this
Thank you
before. Yeah.
Good night,
Size
everybody.
matters.
Non sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.